Hello, in an earlier video I showed you how to create background patterns using the pattern layer in Affinity Photo. Today I want to show you how to use those backgrounds in half drop pattern. I have two ways that I do these. One is creating an artboard and the other one is just exporting a PNG, and I'll show you both ways on how to use your standard repeat in a half drop repeat if you want to do that. So first let's go ahead and I'm gonna recreate this pattern that I'm showing you here, just so that it makes it a little bit easier for us since I have something already started. But first let me show you how I create the template for the half drop repeat. So let's go File, New, and I usually create 24 by 24 300 dpi. I don't usually create an artboard, and no changes in margins or in the color. I usually select transparent background because I don't want that white background, but you can unselect that. So that's my preference, and just go ahead and create. Now let's create the half drop pattern. So let's make this just a little bit smaller. Select the rectangle tool. Let's create a rectangle, and let's go over to the swatches and make sure that it doesn't have any fill, and the stroke is just let's increase the size maybe just to 5 points, just enough for us to see it. And then the next thing I want to do for the half drop repeat, I know that on each side it will drop half of the length. So we'll just go ahead and go back to my layers, select the curve using the move tool, select the curve, and first let's add it to the symbols. If you don't have the symbols tab, you can go to window and make sure that symbols it's selected, and then you want to go ahead, once you have the layer selected, create, and this create a new symbol from the current object. So everything that we add in here, it's going to be repeated in the other duplicates of this specific symbol. So hit Alt and it will create a duplicate, and then we move it, let's drop by half of that length to create a half drop repeat. Then the same thing, let's go Alt and it creates another duplicate, and then we make sure that it's properly aligned. Then let's create this around as well. Alt and select and drag, creates another copy around it. Let's Alt again, and this creates the half drop. Make sure that it's perfectly aligned, and then another duplicate. I hit Alt every time and then just drag, and it's make sure you see the green lines and the red lines, and you'll have the full alignment needed. And then one more symbol here to complete the full repeat. Now I want to create a background just to make sure that I can see, and I just click on the rectangle tool, create a rectangle. For this one, I just want to make sure it covers everything, and I want to go ahead and go to my swatches, and it doesn't need a stroke, but I want to make sure that it's the fill is set. So move the layer all the way to the bottom, and then you'll see your half drop template already. So the first the copies that we created, I'm just going to go ahead and group those, Control G, and this is the group, and usually you can rename the repeats. And in the original one, you can go ahead and name it this is the actual pattern. Okay, so anything that we put inside here, it's going to repeat in the other symbols, in the other rectangles as a repeat. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy what I already have from this other pattern. Let's see all my elements, and go ahead, actually I'm going to copy the frames as well. And then we have our new template that we just created. I'm just gonna paste the items here and go ahead and right click and paste, and then all my items are now in this new template. And what I want to do is I want to bring all of these inside my pattern right above the curve, which is this first rectangle that we created. It's basically the guide. Now the pattern is created in our new template, and what I want to do is to use one of my standard drop repeat patterns that I created using the pattern layer. Using the pattern layer in Affinity Photo, I created all these different backgrounds or textures, and for this one I want to use one of these that I have created. But what happens here is that this is now a half drop, and I want to repeat it. See, this is how it's going to look, but what I created is actually a full drop, so it's not going to align properly in this specific area. So in order for me to use this layer or to use this pattern, I need to convert my half drop into a full drop, and then I can put this pattern in the background. I sometimes keep I do create templates in the half drop as well, and I have a set of half drop patterns, half drop texture backgrounds that I have created. So sometimes what I do is I usually just copy whatever pattern I have from here, from my templates, and then just copy and paste. Okay, so now that we have our pattern, our half drop pattern, the next thing that I want to do is to be able to use those pattern textures that I created using the pattern layer in Affinity Photo. So in order to do that, I do it two ways. First, I could go ahead and just export the half drop as a PNG, and then just go over to Affinity Photo and make it into a full drop. So let's do that first, and then I'll show you another way where you can bring all your assets, bringing your document, the full document, into your asset library and then using it over in Affinity Photo from there. So first, let's go ahead and file, let's export as a PNG. So if you want to export it as a PNG, you can export the standard size that you created. You want to make sure you export the whole document that we created. This is the 24 by 24, and looks like we still have the background color, so let's cancel that. Make sure you hide the background and make sure that you see these little checkered in the background. That means it's going to export transparent. So again, Control Alt Shift and S, go ahead and export, save it as your if this is on title, so let's call it breakfast, and in the PNG files, so just breakfast, and save. And now we head over to Affinity Photo. I already have one here, but I can show you file. Now you want to go ahead and open the breakfast file that it's right here. And then what I want to do with this one is make sure that first I turn this into a full drop design. So select the layer. I have a little macro because I like automations, and I create macro for everything, but basically what it does is selects the layer and reduce it by 50%, and then duplicates it and turns it into a full drop from the half drop, which we're gonna do manually. But if you want to record it, basically just go to your macro, and if you don't have the tab available, just go ahead and go to Window and select macros, and I suggest you record it because this is going to make your process a lot more efficient. So just make sure the macro is available and then just hit record and start recording. Okay, but since I already have it, I'm not going to do that, but I'm going to show you. So first, make sure that the layer is selected using the move tool, and then and then we're going to reduce this just by 50%. And you want to look at the lines, make sure everything is aligned, and then you just duplicate it. I hit Alt and selected it, and then what we're doing is making these just a little bit smaller, like 50% the current size, and making it into a half drop. So for that, we make sure that it's fully aligned, so we know that we dropped it by 50%, which means that we have to center it here, right in the center, and then we have one copy at the top and one copy at the bottom, and then we have converted our half drop into a full drop design. Now you can see that because this is a PNG, there's no background. I'm going to go ahead and copy like some of these colors and bring them over here into my background layer, into my new breakfast design. One thing I like to do to keep organized is just select all the layers. You can merge select it and makes it into one single layer, or you can just group it. I'm just going to group it for now. And then let's see, now I have this cool color as the background, which is basically just another rectangle with one of my favorite colors I use for some of my patterns, or the colors that I'm using actually for this food themed mini collection. And what I want to do is basically go to my Affinity photo texture patterns that I created, and now because I have it set up as a full drop, I can use my full drop pattern that I had created using the pattern layer here in Affinity Photo. Now I know that it's going to repeat fully in this design. In this one, I just want to make sure I change it to overlay or soft light. These are some of my favorites. And then if I like the blue, you can always change the colors, and I have another video where I show you how to change the colors, but I'll show you here very quickly. There's multiple ways, whichever way you think it's better for you. You can use the effects and select color overlay. Click on the color overlay and select the color that you want to recolor it. You can go back to your, here sometimes I like using the HSL color wheel, or you can just select HSL sliders, or you can select these RGB hex codes. If you have a hex code and you have a color that you want to use, you can use that one. But I'm just gonna go over to my color wheel and pick a color here. Let's say I want that color, but it's kind of taking too much attention, so I am going to change the opacity just a little bit. But this is for the overlay, so just put it there. Now you have changed the color of your pattern, and here you can just change the opacity as well to, if you still want to see that pinkish color. I don't want to see that color. Actually, let's see, maybe a different color overlay. I don't know. Let's see, I want to use a green. Ooh, I like that. That's probably a lot better. And again, I want to change the opacity because I don't want it to take a lot of attention. So I kind of like these. So to me, it doesn't really matter what color you create these in the background, unless you just want to create it in black, and you can always change the color using the hue, saturation, and lightness, the HSL, or adding this effect, adding the overlay, whichever way works for you. And I have another video where I show you 3 of my favorite ways to recolor pixels in Affinity Designer, so you can do the same thing in Affinity Designer. We're here in Affinity Photo, so I just use both interchangeably back and forth. Okay, so this is one way on how you can then use your pattern and make sure that it all aligns and you have your full drop. Now it's a full drop, and then you can upload to different places, but the actual design is a half drop design. The second way is that I use is, let's go back to Affinity Designer. So the second way that I use is I create an artboard. So here you click on the artboard, and if you're in the tablet or your iPad, you have to go over to the three bars at the top, and then from there you go to artboards and you can create different artboards. But the reason why I like creating the artboard here and just assigning it, like make sure that my dimensions are 24 by 24 and it's centered 0 0. So now with these I can go ahead and select the full artboard, make sure I'm in my move tool, select the artboard and bring it over to my assets. Once it's in my assets and my asset library, which is called half drop patterns, is linked, I can go ahead over to my Affinity photo, and let's do this again. So we can head over to Affinity photo, and in Affinity photo we can go ahead and create new 24 by 24 and go ahead and create. Then the next thing we want to do is go ahead and drag our asset, which is our half drop pattern that we just created, and make sure that it's fully centered 24 by 24 0 0. So what we want to do here is the same thing that I did with the PNG file. Okay, so now we have the artboard in our newly created 24 by 24 inches, and we want to convert these half drop tile into a full drop tile. So the first thing is here in the contextual menu, make sure that lock children is unselected, and then let's go ahead and change these to 12 by 12, which is half, and then go ahead and the same thing, click Alt and copy the artboard, make sure that it's fully aligned, and let's make the half drop repeat. Just one more here, make sure that it's fully aligned. You see the red lines and the green lines, and then we need two more copies of these. This is the full artboard and all the elements that are inside that artboard. So if you go here and you say, for example, I still need to move these elements, so you'll see how it changes in all the other patterns. So I like using these if I'm not still fully convinced of the half drop layout. I can use this process. If I'm liking it, I like the layout, I know it's good, then I use the earlier method, which is just exporting the PNG and adding the backgrounds as I need. So I like these. So the next thing I can do is, again, you can just group the artboards and make sure that everything is Control G groups the artboard, and then add your background. So let's go back and grab some of the backgrounds that we've already had. I'm going back here in Affinity Designer, and let's just copy some of the backgrounds, and then go head over to Affinity Photo and then just put the backgrounds and then move them all the way to the bottom and see. And now this one, let's go ahead and add the same texture that we added. Let's use a different color this time. Let's use this blue. I like this blue. Let's use this texture. So let's make sure I place it right. Look like we placed it inside one of the artboards, so we want it outside of the artboard, and we want it at the bottom right above this, and it's still too dark. So what I want to do is again change the color, but let's try changing it to just hue, saturation and lightness, change it all the way to black, and that's fine. Because what I want to do is go ahead and use this layer as an overlay, and then this one is normal, and the full layer I want to use as an overlay, and I like how it overlays it with the background color. So here you go. Now in order to export this one, these other artboards, they're not going to show. One thing that I like to do is, again, I moved it inside the I moved it inside the artboard, so make sure you don't move it. So the next thing I do is I still want to change these a little bit, just maybe not so powerful, maybe like 50%, and it looks good. The next thing I want to do is, now I'm ready to export this one. So in order to export, I can go ahead and select, head over to the export persona, and I can create one new slice. It's going to give you slices for each one of those, but what you want is to create a slice that is 24 by 24, and that way you are able to export the full pattern. And then here you can select now single PNG, or you can select JPEG. Best quality is also a good one that I use, and you can do the same. Now you can also go back and possibly use this other color, the green one, and just change the color background. And I like that, using that black and the overlay basically just matches the color of the background, so I like that. So this is another way, and the way when I use this is when I'm still not feeling very confident and I want to change the layout just enough. I use this method. These are all Affinity Photo texture patterns that I created using these, let's show you, this layer, pattern, new pattern layer. And here, of course, you select the, I usually just keep it to 1000. And I'm going to hide everything else for now. And here in my pattern layer, I usually just play around with the brushes and see what I want to create here. Let's see. I like these acrylics, I like these Artista brushes. Actually, some of these are good just to create some lines and some general textures, right? And I like creating it in here. It's just like you would in Photoshop, creating some textures, and then yeah, even something like that. And then you see how you're building your texture, how it's starting to look kind of like that. A little bit too much on that last one, but yeah, just as if you were using Photoshop. And the other benefit here is that you can create using your Photoshop brushes. You can bring your Photoshop brushes in and play with them as well. Bring on all the ones that you like and you prefer, and then you have, now you can have created an asset. And since I'm thinking this one it's good enough, I'm thinking this one is something that I can probably use in the future for a background. What I do is I go ahead and go over to my move tool, select it, and bring it over to my asset library. Now you have two ways that you can use your half drop patterns, make them into a full drop design, and use your textures. So let's see how it's going to look. Let's put the texture behind it. It's a little bit too much. Obviously I would change these just enough, and maybe add a color in the background. Yeah, and there you go. There's another texture that you can use for your pattern. This is fun. Okay, I hope you learned something new today. I hope you try them. Let me know. I'm sure there's other ways to do these, but these are the two that I use the most. I hope you learned something. I hope you use these methods if you ever need them, and let me know if you want to learn anything specific on how I use this combination of Affinity Photo and Affinity Designer for my watercolors. And this one is gouache. I painted all these in gouache over the past few days. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye bye.